Today on Endures, I am joined by Aroney, speaking about something that is really close to my heart, which is helping people achieve peak performance, whether they are female founders or just leaders who really want to perform at their best without burnout. Now, Karen does that as the founder of Exec Fuel, where she works on mindset and nutrition strategies to help people to thrive. So thank you for joining me, Karen. I'm really keen to hear a little bit more about what you do.
Such a pleasure to be here, Suze. Thank you for having me. It's wonderful.
Now, you have a background in both psychology and nutrition, so I'd love to hear how those things blend together or how you came to found Exec Fuel and go down this path.
Yeah, absolutely. So I practice as a registered nutritionist with my background in psychology. And one of the biggest reasons I even started Exec Fuel is because many moons ago, I myself was working in corporate. And what I saw happening around me is that leaders were very quickly burning out, but not in the way that we really understand burnout, more from the fact that their physiology was changing first. So they were either putting on weight and or losing energy, and that was sort of falling to the side, yet they were still trying to achieve certain goals, both professionally and personally, and weren't quite understanding why they weren't getting there. And so what I was seeing coming and happening around me was a lot of them were either wearing themselves out, burning out, or complaining around burnout and not feeling their best. And I sort of saw that and went, I don't want that to be me. I don't need to subscribe to that. I can still be fit and still be wealthy, or still be professional, or still be hitting goals, right? Achieving my goals. But I guess that also is a generational thing for us. You work to burn out, and then you decide what you'll do with your health and everything else later. And so that's where Exec Fuel came about. I actually left that, retrained in nutrition, already had psychology behind me, and then started a consultancy that really focused on high performers, high achievers who have an athlete mindset. Your corporate athletes. And your female, your female founders or that sort of demographic, who are really keen on taking their business or their leadership or, as an executive to that next level, but they feel like nutrition is the last piece of the puzzle. And so that's what I help them build. So it's more around setting those foundations and growing those foundations from the inside out so that you're feeling a lot more confident about how you perform, how you lead, how you show up daily, because it's all connected.
I love this because your goal is so similar to mine, but your approach is so different but so needed. So you mentioned people talking about coming to that understanding that nutrition is maybe the final piece of the puzzle. My experience has always been, as a healthcare provider, as a clinic owner, that people can sometimes be really reluctant to discuss nutrition, or it goes into the too hard basket, or it becomes very one size fits all, or they're really resistant to change. What is it that gives your clients the idea that this is the piece they need to work on?
So a lot of them come to me saying one of sort of three things. One, I'm not happy with the way I look and feel. And the second one being, I'm not feeling mentally great, and that could be linked to how I eat. And the third one being, I know I'm not eating well. You just got to fix this for me, right? And that's usually the easiest one to solve for. And you're so right. There's so much resistance in people coming to the light around nutrition because change is so hard. But it doesn't have to be that way. And it's usually seen as being quite difficult. And I think that resistance comes from the fact that most high performers don't have capacity. And so when you don't feel like you have capacity, I think nutrition is one of the last things you are really willing to work on, aren't you? Because it's a habit that you have formed since childhood.
Yeah. And we had a conversation about habit stacking just before we got on the podcast. And I actually recorded a podcast today about habit stacking, but I know it's really easy to habit stack bad behaviors as well. Like, we sit down in the evening and open the ice cream sometimes because we're putting on a show on Apple TV. And, I think a little bit of everything in moderation is okay. But talk me through your programs and how you take the this being another thing to do away from, because I think that sometimes the resistance with people, I mean, that's my experience where they go, oh, what else do I have to do?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually exactly that. It's like, oh, one more thing. Can you just take it off me? And that's exactly the demographic that I work with. I think there's such high capacity that their capacity starts to erode. And their decision fatigue is lapsing. They have disrupted sleep, and that sense that task, that was once simple, is suddenly feeling like another I have to or I should. Yeah, especially with the demographic we work with, right? They're always like, I should do this, I have to do this. So the way that my program works is, it is a 6-month program. In the first couple of months, what we really work on is aligning their nutrition with their mindset, and then how that integrates with their lifestyle. So it really takes it from understanding their current metabolic state. So we usually do this through a DEXA and some metabolic testing for their blood, so that we fully understand what's going on under the hood, which is super crucial, because a lot of decisions that we make need to be informed in data. We can't, my high performers don't just want wishy-washy, I kind of feel this is it.
Yeah.
That's not how they work, right?
Yeah.
And I don't work that way. So we have data in front of us, and then from there, it's really clear and obvious to us when we do this what needs to work first, whether it's the fact that you're feeling so sluggish because your visceral fat is quite high, or your muscle mass isn't high enough, or we need to build a little bit more muscle for you to have more energy. It could be as simple as, or maybe there's something more intricate going on with the blood work as well that they're not aware of. So we start off with testing, and then, as you mentioned earlier with habits, we start to ingrain some really simple habits that subconsciously can be applied, particularly when we are looking at that particular data and then moving forward from that data. So, for example, if somebody comes to me and says that, or I'm starting to feel really, really tired, and I'm making really silly decisions, I'm not at that leadership capacity that I once was, and I want to get there. Usually, and this is probably not surprising to most people, it isn't just the fact that they make so many decisions in a day and that they're context switching, but more from a metabolic state, a physiological state, they're probably inflamed. Right, so they probably do have high visceral fat. It probably is a case of high inflammation in the body, and that can impact every area of their body, especially the brain. And so when they're feeling like it's like everything's just a little bit too hard, I'm not pushing through, what we do is then work on meal plans and strategies that are nutritionally adequate for this particular person to bring down that body weight or that visceral fat and bring back that energy and build that muscle, but making it in a way that they can handle it mentally, so it's not too difficult to do and it applies to them. And then how do we integrate that into their lifestyle longer term so that it's sustainable? And that usually runs a course of about 6 months, because it takes a bit of rewiring for people.
Yeah, and the support as well. You mentioned the visceral fat. I was going to ask you about the impact of cortisol, so that increased stress that leaders and owners hold. Is that a big piece of the picture?
I love that. Great. So I'm wondering if we can talk about cortisol, because it's such a topical conversation. No one understands it. So yes, high cortisol is linked to many, many things. Yes, it's linked to a high physiological stress state. Yes, it's also very much linked to shutdown in people. Yes, it's linked to bad decision making, and that especially includes food decisions and food behavior, which we really work on. But it's also very closely linked to high visceral fat. And so that's also a physiological response in the body. And so when a lot of leaders come to see me, and we do understand that, they're already at high capacity and their cortisol levels are high and they're not sleeping or recovering properly, then it's usually not surprising that their visceral fat is also high as well. And the problem with that is not so much because visceral fat isn't the fat that we can see. And it's funny we're having an entire few minutes dedicated to this, but it really is important for high endurance leaders, right? Something that holds them back, literally and figuratively. So the issue with having high visceral fat is like it's linked to so many different metabolic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, as you already know. And so reducing that alone will help with energy, it will help with mood, it will help with your psychological state, it will help with emotional bandwidth, which is what I find a lot of leaders are also lacking right now. It's like, I just don't have the bandwidth to deal with things that go on at home, or things that are going on in the office, or things that are going on in my own business.
Mhm. Which defeats the purpose, for me, of having a business. Like, my whole thing is, you want your business or your leadership to enable you to live the life or leave the legacy that you hoped for. And I think what people don't realize is that we can work, but our average age, and you might have some more up-to-date research on this, but I believe the average age at which we get chronic disease is about 63, and then our average age of death is like maybe 81 now. So that's almost 20 years
Yes.
of, you've worked so hard. Do leaders understand that?
I think they know it, they just don't want to acknowledge it. Because again, it's that capacity or lack thereof and the emotional bandwidth. I think knowing it is obviously very different to acting on it, and this is where we're sort of going back into that square one, where it's why is that resistance there? Because they don't know how to change it. So obviously coaching and working with specialists like yourself and myself really changes that. But more often than not, people, because we're so bombarded by influencers and nutrition information, it's everywhere. So I think as a founder particularly, or as a business owner, we think we can do everything, and that includes your nutrition. I can tell people honestly, you can't do everything. I mean, I have specialists for certain things, no doubt, Suze, you have specialists for certain things, because it takes that decision fatigue off me, and it's not my zone of genius, so it's not going to work if I try and apply that. So I think they think they can do it. It goes on for too long, and then they come and see me at a point where either something has happened with their health, or they know something will happen if they don't get it together. So I think it's a funny one, because high performers again think they can do it all and they're invincible. But then understanding that as a high performer, this is probably something that you should take seriously and work on, just so that you can avoid being one of the average.
Statistics, yeah. And there's that saying that there's no athletes that have won Olympic goals or marathons or whatever that don't have a coach. I mean, I have a running coach. I could write my own running programs. I don't want to. I want to look at something and see the little green dot going, and just take that level of decision and give it to somebody else.
Yes.
You also mentioned data, which I think is so important. So my background, I got hit by a car in 2013, and I actually had, so I really resonate with your talk about inflammation, because I had this chronic inflammation for years, and the way that shows up in our bodies is so variable, from, as you say, the snappiness to those kind of little aches and the headaches and just the decision issues and concentration. And I really needed to see the bloods and to work with an integrative doctor and to work with a naturopath who really, thought outside the box and actually could show me how things were changing over time, so that I saw there was a point to eating how I was eating. It was very individualized to me. And I definitely agree with needing that block of time to commit to it, and needing those pre and post tests. So what type of people go into your programs?
That's a great question. I'm just going to go back on your point for one sec, because I found it so fascinating around, yes, the data, and I'm sorry to hear about your journey. But I know that there's always growth from discomfort, right? And knowing all these sorts of things. I thought there's something in there that you said that was quite interesting, is yes, the inflammation piece and making decisions out of that inflamed state. It's one of the things that people do ignore, and it's always a, what's wrong with me? Why can't I make those decisions? Why can't I do this? And it's usually never you. It's your body giving you signals that something is going on. And we've become so good at pushing through, especially as high performers, absolutely. And recovery is such a huge part of this. So one of the things that I do say to clients is, if you think about athletes, professional athletes, half their year is dedicated to recovery and rest,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why isn't yours? Right? Because
Yeah.
if especially say it's the female founders and they just gawk, they're like, how the hell am I supposed to do 180 days, day off?
Yeah.
But it's actually crucial for you to start building this into your calendar, because they have coaches for their mindset, they have coaches for their recovery, they have coaches for their weightlifting, they have coaches for everything, and we don't. So if you expect to be a high performer, start to engage the right people around you, just like you did, Sue. Like, start to engage the right people around you that can help you become a better version of you, or become version 2. Yeah, so I really like that you said that. It's something that I really bang on about a lot.
Use recovery as a part of it's the fourth part of my framework. And funnily enough, I had an article published in a magazine the other day, and someone commented on it on LinkedIn and said, recovery is just too spoken about nowadays. What people need is more focus. And I'm going, but you actually need to have the micro breaks to have more focus. How much of an impact does living in this real binary society, I guess, have on us? And that kind of comes back to the one size fits all nutrition things as well, right? That everybody is maybe told they should go gluten and dairy free, or now I guess everybody's trying to go on Ozempic. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
you see that in your work?
Huge impact. Yeah, huge impact. I agree. There's this binary recovery for high performers, particularly, feels like they're being slack or lazy. And they're not taking it as a leadership tool, which is what I do. I think, and what I talk about, it is your leadership tool. Performance, fuel is your performance tool, recovery is your leadership tool, because you cannot make the best possible choices or the most aligned thinking from a state of depletion. And your performance isn't there if you don't recover. It just isn't. And so this recovery state, I mean, if you think about some of the top athletes in the world, and the way they come through every season, they couldn't be playing that way every month of the year. So why do we play that way every month of the year? Yeah, it's impossible.
I have that saying in my keynote that you don't cross a marathon finish line and go, oh, I'll probably got time to squeeze another half marathon in.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, perfect.
You do
I
the
love
thing,
that.
and then you're done, and then you invest in your recovery, and yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
So what about the impact of hormones? We're much more educated in the perimenopause space now, which is amazing. How big a role does that play with your professionals and female founders who come to you?
Yeah, it's huge actually. So I'm a specialist in women, particularly in my field with nutrition and mindset. And so the reason I take this very, very seriously is because perimenopause is probably one of the most difficult stages of your life to do anything from body recomposition to getting more energy to feeling mentally clear. So hormones are so impactful in terms of not just your ghrelin and your leptin hormones, which is your hunger and your fullness hormones, and those receptors, and understanding when we're full and when we're hungry. Those are highly impacted even in perimenopause. But also your sex hormones, like your testosterone, your estrogen, which would be a huge, and your progesterone, which is a huge aspect to what you do as well with endurance. And those need to actually be leveled out for you to not just make better decisions so that we're sharper, we have more energy, we're feeling less of those dips, right? And we're more leveled out, but also even from a body recomposition tool. So it maybe not so obvious. A lot of women come to see me for what they want to do is weight loss, right? And I say it in inverted commas because whilst, yes, it's very valid that women come to see nutritionists because they want to lose weight, but actually what's happening is more than just you not eating well. It's your hormones not responding because they're at levels that aren't sufficient. And the issue then becomes sort of twofold. A, we need to rebuild your levels, and we can do that obviously through nutrition and other avenues like HRT, for example. But what we also really want to mitigate is as you're getting older in perimenopause and in that menopausal state, you are at a higher risk of cardiovascular disease because we become quite insulin sensitive at this point. And so if we're eating in a fashion that is going to really prompt and provoke insulin resistance, we are more inclined to pre-diabetes and diabetes as well. And so it really is this, it's not just about the way you're going to look, it's how you are going to be longevity-wise if we don't work on this now, and help you build habits and tools and a nutrition plan that is easy for you to put together, but also means that you're going to have a longer quality of life as well.
So you have just educated me on something, because I never considered the impacts on the satiety hormones. Whereas in the world that I'm in, I look at the impacts of things like estrogen depletion on injury and, all of our tendinopathies and things that that seem to magically appear in women over 40 that
Yes.
we never learned that stuff in uni 20 years ago. Something I commonly see in women, even approaching perimenopause, is they get fobbed off. So, and I'm sure it's something you see in your social circles as well. What would be your advice for women to advocate for themselves? Or how would you explain to somebody, I guess, the importance of something like you do, where they get that really broad, diagnostic, actually looking at everything from a nutritional compositional point of view, as opposed to I think a tick boxy point of view of, you're either in menopause or you're not, or we can't test your hormone levels because we don't know what they normally were, or all those kind of things that women get told.
Yeah. So a lot of women who are in perimenopause usually come presenting with quite typical perimenopausal symptoms like the night sweats, the brain fog, the sore limbs because of the estrogen receptors, and the moods as well. So I have a fantastic women's doctor that I work with, and I refer clients to her for specific medical intervention, and that includes those tests as well. But I do approach it quite matter-of-factly with clients. If there's sort of everything's a choice. Everything is a choice. And so you can choose to live in this state, or you can choose to live out of this state and advance your health. And diet-wise, I think you mentioned something really integral there. If they are in perimenopause, we want to be checking those estrogen levels, because I want to be checking what their bone mass density looks like so that we can intervene quickly with bone mass density in terms of how we intervene with nutrition. And so for me, once I work with an integrative approach with this particular doctor, for example, and women can approach their doctor as well, then I also integrate and very clearly say to them, this is, for example, your 30-day plan. It's going to support you either losing X% body fat, which they may need to do, gaining X kilogram of muscle, which they usually need to do in perimenopause, myself included. I had to go through a growth phase in the last couple of years of putting more muscle on, because muscle's so metabolically active. We want to be having more of it so we have more energy, but also it's protecting us. And so obviously the lack of estrogen means our muscle breaks down, which also means our metabolism slows. And so then we're also looking at, well, how can we then help you increase your metabolism? Because it is going to slow if your muscle mass is also decreasing. And so we then look at foods that they can actually enjoy and integrate into their lifestyle that will help with muscle mass recovery as well. And so it's so intertwined with women's health, particularly in the hormonal state. But it's absolutely crucial that we nail it, and of course tweak it for the client, because like you said, there's no templates to this. It's every human is very, very different. Every woman in this state is actually quite different with some of the nutritional needs anyway. But at a broader level, I think when women come to see me and they're in denial, and they're sort of hitting against a wall around, why am I not thinking straight? Why am I putting on weight? Everybody comes to you with that whole, I'm getting it around the tummy area now. It can be mitigated. And that's what I help them do. So we really look at a very nice, doable nutrition plan for them, while simultaneously working on balancing out their hormones, which is what we need to do. We need to balance them out and have greater quality of life, since we're going to be living for a few years after menopause.
And I think, we're probably both in agreement of this thing of, if you can mitigate something, why not do it? If you can do something about it, we probably both are aware from our backgrounds that people can actually do much more than they think possible. And so we don't need to live in this world of just accepting this is a time of our lives, or accepting we're going to be constantly tired, or hustle go without recovery. So on that, I would love to finish with our final question, Karen, which is, if there was no barriers, what is the legacy you'd like to leave?
For me, it's ending well-being poverty for women. And I sort of coined this a few years ago with the reality that the work that I do, my biggest mission is really to ensure that women have the knowledge, the tool, and the internal capacity to thrive, so that the next generation inherits that blueprint. Because we are working from blueprints of women who have done the best they could in their situations. But what I really see with women is that there is well-being poverty around their emotional regulation, their capacity or inability to have capacity, their confidence, their financial confidence, and their ability to lead without abandoning their health. I do this specifically for women, especially in the women's group program, or even one-to-one, because what I want to see is, yes, you can eat healthy, yes, you can look extraordinary and fit, but is this going to get you to a place where you are feeling more confident financially? Probably. Is this going to get you to a place where you are leading with confidence? Very likely. And is this going to get you to a place where you will leave a legacy yourself, where you feel fully confident and aligned with your authentic self? And it's one of those things that sort of came to my mind a few years ago when I first started doing this, that my mission is more than just helping people get fit, lose weight, be healthy, live longer. For female founders, all the women that I have worked with they keep hitting goals, whether they are scared of them or not. They usually are. They're a bit scared, and they get to that next level. You would know this with everything that you do. But then why do they keep going? Because they start to feel physically healthier and happier.
That's so amazing. That really hits, because of course, if you feel more confident, then you're probably not spending money on things to make yourself feel better, right? You're probably more aware of what your values are. And you are doing amazing work. So I will share Karen's links in the show notes, and definitely encourage you to reach out to her for assistance if this is an area that you are interested in working in. Thank you so much for joining me, Karen.
Oh, thanks, Suze. I love having conversations.